megacycles by authority of the Federal Communications Commission. A test program follows. To you who are trained technically, I need hardly say that there's still a number of problems to solve. I guess you know them as well as anybody knows them. But I think we've proceeded far enough to justify the statement, at least, that these technical problems are not insurmountable.
So this is the Code 8 data breakdown for week 12, and I actually read it this time. We will have a quiz this week, but we won't have the quiz in the usual tool because I don't have access to the tool. But this week we are taking a look at the two finalists, KIP, Hamburg's Lantern 1. Now KIP, who won their group, and Hamburg's Lantern 1, who came fourth in their group and fought every step of the way to get here to the final. The metrics I guess they picked during these 11 rounds and how they match the Code averages, so we see what the most successful teams are doing and how they appear versus the averages. Yes. So let's first look at how the SAS metric breaks down. So this is all relation to I'd say the averages. So we see Hamburger Lanterns and KIP have a relatively similar pairing up until you get to effective power, creature protection, and then other. Now other is always a misnomer, and so many we'll see why that's in there. But there's efficiency matters. And Brett and I have said this every week. Efficiency matters. Efficiency is critical to the decks because the quicker you get through the decks, the quicker you can replay your combos, or the quicker you can find those cards for your combos. And that's the exciting thing here. But apart from that, I'd say there's a few. You see the good trends here. The expected amber is peaking a little bit. You see a little bit more artifact control from KIP, which it makes sense because they are playing. Well, we'll see why. Disruption is a little bit higher in Hamburger Lanterns, and it's just really this key creature protection thing here, and that is such a huge difference. I mean, this is where 0 is the average for the average decks. I mean, other, we'll come on to that shortly, but this creature protection here, that's going to be interesting to see how that maps through. In terms of sets, the average was Call of the Archons was just about the highest over Mass Mutation with Age of Ascension and the Worlds Collide. But KIP have hardly used any Call of the Archon decks. I think they've probably used one. No, two, sorry. Whereas they are focused on Age of Ascension decks. So they've got the high quality Age of Ascension decks. Access to those. And that must be what they're focusing on in here and how they're playing. So the averages and the Hamburger Lanterns are kind of doing what I would expect to see, which is less Worlds Collide because they seem to be playing less of the creature heavy decks. And more Kota, more AOA, some Mass Mutation. But it's very interesting to see that the top two teams are very AOA heavy. And if you look at the houses, ignore the title here, look at the houses here. Again, we see this wildly different to the averages. Shadows, hardly at all by KIP. Hamburger Lanterns, way beyond above average. Untamed, way above average for KIP. Not too far for Hamburger Lanterns. Brokener, way lower for KIP. Logos, understandably for both KIP and Hamburger Lanterns, they are way above the average. Mars, again, KIP has so many, must be having loads of Genka decks because they've got so many Mars decks and so many AOA decks. And then we come to Dis. Again, lower. So as we look at this, you can see more that the strategy they're going is the Shadows Logos. Dis is the combo that Hamburger Lanterns are primarily looking at, and the Untamed Logos Mars is primarily what KIP are looking at. Unsurprisingly, we have very little Saurian and Star Alliance because they had taken significantly fewer decks there. But it's definitely interesting to see. So the common cards in the decks they've selected so far, and bear in mind, this does not factor in the decks they've chosen for the final. And if they are watching this replay, they've got to note, please, that we are expecting all Archon cards to be shown in the before the final takes place to prove access to the decks. But we see XYZ Researcher from KIP, Library of Babel, great efficiency cards, Shockworm, fun Mars cards, Pit, but we're seeing lots of Logos cards, which isn't very surprising. that given how many houses they have, but yet how few Mars cards there are in the common pile here, is very interesting. But Hamburger Lanterns again, Wild Wormhole, that's one hell of a gamble of a card. I mean, draw and play the next card is pretty impressive. Lab Work, again, another high efficiency card, but then we see a broken card in, and 19 Bumpsies. It's interesting to see. But as we keep saying, we're not suspecting that most of them are Logos cards and most of them are AOA. So the uncommon cards, Key Abduction, not surprised at all. Maybe we're set to see, I don't know, Martian Generosity, but we'll see. And then Hamburger Lanterns had Eureka at the top one. So here you can see the Key Abduction is critical, but then also the high throughput. But then we look at the bottom and we see 18 copies of Heart of the Forest. So everyone went on saying Heart of the Forest will ruin this, Heart of the Forest will ruin this. The only team that we've seen play Heart of the Forest is KIP. And I wouldn't say that's the reason they've won all the games they have. Don't get me wrong, it's a very, very powerful card, and I fully expect to see it in the final. Not that I know what decks they're playing yet. I haven't checked, I'm hoping they've submitted them. But it's very easy, and Fuzzy Gruin coming close second, and Martian Hounds third. But Hamburger Lanterns wants with Routine Job, Key of Darkness, and Red Hot Armor. I get the feeling that Key of Darkness is more a happy coincidence, but Routine Job is a very unsurprising one to see. So, we're going to jump into the quiz here at this point. I have just going to go through the answers on here because I don't have access to the quiz kit today. So, just state your answers into the chat if you want to play along. If you don't want to play along, don't worry. But how many players kept their round 2 decks? I'm just going to do one thing quickly. What was that? So how many players kept their round 2 decks? Okay, I'm going to go through this now, and the answer was 10% of them. So of all the top 4 teams, only 10% of them. So bear in mind, that's 12 teams, not 4. So that must mean 1 and a bit teams kept their round 2 decks. Which was the most played set though in this set? AOA, which I think is kind of a given here, but it's always interesting to see. And which card was the most found in decks? Well, this is obviously going to be the Plague Rats. The deck with the highest score, with the highest speed, has a score of what? I'm going to jump in here and say 15. But the most played house, of course, is going to be Shadows, which isn't too surprising. It's one of the most common houses we see. If it's not Shadows, it'd be Logos, and Logos isn't an option there. And finally, the least played set is Call of the Archons, AOA, Worlds Collide, or Mass Mutation. Well, I think we know it's not going to be AOA because we know that's the most played set. But let's see. Worlds Collide, I guess. Oh no, Call of the Archons. Call of the Archons was the least played set. That's very interesting to see. So, thanks to everyone for Decks of Keyforge. Thanks to Liptops for once again doing great metrics and all the way through Coat 7 and Coat 8, and he's agreed to continue for Coat 9. We hope you like these. We hope you like the little quizzes. We do enjoy doing it every week. And thank you for everyone for playing Keyforge. I'm now going to jump through to the featured game. So this week's featured game is a really good pairing. This week it is going to be the AC Regulars versus the Hamburger Lanterns, if I remember correctly. So let's see if we can get this up and running.